Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our channel. We're offended, you're offended. I'm Kim. Everyone knows Tyler. And we have a special guest with us today. um, he is somebody who I play my nerd game with, MechWarrior Online. Yeah, say hi.
I really appreciate you inviting me on here. My name's Walter.
Well, hello,
Uh,
Walter. I know you as a totally different name, so hello.
yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really thankful that you guys invited me to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to some great conversations. Got some cool stuff to talk about tonight.
You like cool shit?
I'm very much interested in it. So I guess let's not waste some time. So Walter, what do you got?
Well,
just throw him right in there.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I guess so. The first thing I wanted to talk about, I saw this documentary recently about this abandoned ghost town. And from what I understand,
Ooh.
Tyler, you're a truck driver, so you're used to driving around a lot. Do you ever pass anywhere that's kind of like you see some suspicious areas or like abandoned areas? You ever notice anything kind of weird when you're on the road?
I know in British Columbia, there are a couple old mining towns that are just like completely deserted. But in terms of weird stuff, I assume you kind of mean like, have you seen, I don't know, like the stories of like a girl on the side of the road looking for a ride or
Weird
like,
stuff crossing the road?
No, oddly enough, I haven't.
That's interesting. I figured of all people, being on the road all the time, you'd see something that was, made you sit there and go like, what was that?
The only thing that I've ever seen that was, holy shit. So in like northwestern Ontario, like the Kenora, Dryden kind of areas, there's claims that there are no mountain lions there. They don't live there.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But so I was driving and I just happened to see something laying down on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. But then you see that what's a telltale part of a mountain lion?
Well, I mean, the tail. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say the really long tail,
and how it hooks, and how it hooks at the back.
Yeah,
that's what I seen. I'm like, what the fuck? I just seen it was a mountain lion, and when I was telling people about it, they said, "Oh, well, the government will not recognize it because they're considered an endangered species there, and if they recognized it, they would have to stop logging in those areas." So
I was going to suggest that they don't recognize it because people from going up there and poaching them.
No,
not cool. Really? It's an endangered species, and they're more concerned with their logging. Oh my God. Where is my soundboard when I need it? Oh, hell no.
Mm-hmm. In that area, they're not an endangered species.
Not cool.
So, I just don't want to disrupt the logging industry. That's messed up.
That is so shady.
Yeah. So that's really it. In terms of like weird stuff.
Well, the only reason why I bring that up is because I was watching a documentary and I kind of read an article about this ghost town, an abandoned ghost town in Alaska. It's by the Kenai Peninsula. It's called Portlock. It's the ghost town of Portlock.
Oh, I know Dawson's Creek was there's I believe it's Dawson Creek, Alaska, and that's where a bunch of people died.
James Vanderbeek.
The gold rush. Yeah, it's Vanderbeek.
Yeah, I did read about that one too. But this Portlock is really interesting to me because it became okay. So from what I know is it was the Royal British Navy landed there in like 1787, and it was really unexplored. It was unoccupied, so they started settling there.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, I guess a few people at certain times would go out hunting, and they would never come back. And then they would end up finding their bodies in this lagoon that was connected to a river. So whatever or whoever had killed them either threw them in the river or by the river in the body parts, because from the article that I read and also the documentaries, apparently a lot of the bodies were mangled and torn apart. And it got to a point where so many people had they'd gone missing. I believe it was up to like 45 people. The people of the town became so paranoid that they all eventually just left, and they left Portlock. And
Yes.
the only description of what they claim they saw was a large, dark-haired creature that was a part of, I guess, the old Alaskan folklore. But apparently there was reports of seeing this creature before people would disappear.
Interesting.
Yes, I actually, once you said it, yes, I remember the town of Portlock. I think if I remember correctly, the only people that actually stayed, I believe, was the postmaster in that town. And once
he was forced to stay for like an additional 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So after that, he's just, no, fuck this, I'm gone. Yeah, they
Would he be forced to stay?
For the mail and stuff.
Are you kidding me? I'd be like, fuck the mail. I ain't dying for this shit.
Well, apparently it was a very important mailing connection spot. So that mailing place was important to getting from one place to the other. So they kept it open until they could open something else, away from that area to send mail to be connected to the next spot.
But yeah, it was it was I don't remember the particulars, but yeah, there was quite a few stories about some kind of like Bigfoot-esque kind of creature, and yeah, there was, I can't remember how many people have gone missing or were murdered.
I thought it was like 45. I thought I remember reading that.
Regardless, that's a lot.
Yeah. Like, you think in a situation like that, where it's multiple people seeing something and a bunch of people disappearing to the point where an entire town is like, I'm out of here. There's got to be some sort of truth to whatever it is that they are seeing for everybody just to up and leave. Because if you think about it, like now, if you're like, I saw Bigfoot down the street, do you think our entire town is just going to be like, I'm out? No. Like, there would have to be...
after reading this story, I would.
But you'd be like, yeah, okay, drunk girl, go have another. You would just brush it off. But if it's to a point where an entire town is peacing out, there's got to be some sort of validity behind that. And that's kind of creepy.
Well, they say that at one point they overheard a commotion going on in past the tree line, and at one point some very brave people decided to go and investigate, and because they thought at first it was like two moose fighting or something, and when they got there, there was no moose found. There was blood everywhere, and there was footprints that were about 18 inches long, just scattered in the area around the blood, just really making it look like whatever was had a confrontation there. It was a full on. They're trying to kill each other, essentially. But what I find crazy is that nobody really went out to investigate any of this without a firearm or something. Why, instead of, I guess, resisting, I guess is the word I want to use here, is, whatever was advancing on the people, they just, jumped ship and ran. And I mean, I get it. The hysteria kicks in and everybody's just like, screw it, I'm gone. But
yeah, see, and it's that's what I would assume too. This was what, 19? Was it 19? Well, I guess early 1900s,
1940s ish,
and the 40s. They would not have guns. This is America. More specifically, this is Alaska. And this is probably it's probably a hunting kind of community.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my assumption. Very outdoorsy, very woodsy kind of place. I would assume there's probably a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting. Like that. Wouldn't you assume? Like, hey,
somebody would step up and be like, I've had enough, you know.
No, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're gonna be a rug. Bucko.
Right? I want that shit on my wall.
That would be
It's interesting because also another aspect of this whole thing that makes it mysterious is that there's only like 4 or 5 pictures taken of Portlock, and then after I had watched the documentary, I guess you could say it was a documentary. It's more or less somebody who does videos on this type of stuff, which piqued my interest. I read the article about it, and I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, so there's only like 4 or 5 pictures of Portlock.
Mm-hmm.
So out of curiosity, I went to Google Earth. I looked up Portlock. It doesn't show up. Like, it'll give you the port of Portlock next to where like the lagoon is, and it'll give you a little arrow. But when you scroll in, it stays blurry. It doesn't clear up. It doesn't show you any of the tree line. It just stays like a little blurry island, like a little blurry peninsula. It's really strange.
So I think it's I think I've seen in Chatham Bay.
Yes, I want to say it's just north of Elizabeth Island.
Elizabeth Island. I don't know. Alaska is mind-boggling. Just how
it's like
big
a southwestern little port. There's like a little lagoon there. It's on the southwestern side of Alaska.
So so is he Dillingham? Eric National. Oh well. Yeah. See, it's I don't know. See, I'm always so leery about this stuff because it's like not necessarily this. Like if a whole town is saying, "Hey, whatever's going on here, I want none of it." That I would actually agree with. Or potentially could be, like Alaska has like bears, big fucking bears.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly, maybe it's a bear. Like they've been known to walk on their hind feet. Like that's not an uncommon sight that a bear will walk upright. So I don't know, unless it's just a really aggressive bear and it got the taste of man flesh.
Or like the case of the 2, I can't remember the name of the incident, but there was 2 lions that were attacking people in Africa that were trying to build a roadway, and they ended up finding out that both lions had sustained an injury. One of them had like a broken tooth, and the other had like an infection, and they found that hunting humans was easier than hunting a gazelle or like a wildebeest, something that would fight back more easily. And so they started preying on people. So the bear thing would make sense, but some of the stories and circumstances, I don't know if maybe it's one of those somebody tells somebody, and then some of the details get exaggerated and blow it up to be this huge misidentification of something, and it freaks everybody out because at the time nobody had like the technology to research it. They didn't have the the resources to really explore what it could have possibly been, and then they just decided, this is too much and we're out of here.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder if that's kind of, that could be a bit of the problem is, that kind of telephone and, someone go, well, I'll go figure it out, and they kind of get screwed up by a hungry bear. Like, I don't know if there was really any kind of articles depicting like when these attacks happened, if they only happened in the spring, or if they were just all year round. Do you know if any of that?
So from what I've read about this particular location and a lot of these incidents with the murders and disappearances, it appears to be a lot of word of mouth. Like there's one story where a guy claims that he saw a giant hairy man creature like destroying fish wheels. He went to get his gun, and when he came back to the site where the creature was destroying these fish wheels, the creature just turned around and stared at him and then walked away. So you had a gun in your hand, but you didn't fire?
Yeah.
You ran and got your gun for a reason. But then as soon as you come back and you see the same creature that you would have thought the first time around seeing it, if it would have scared him so badly, would he really have ran to get his gun to come back and stare at it?
Mhm.
Yeah, that seems a little suspicious.
And like the whole screaming in the woods and then going out and finding a bunch of blood everywhere. I mean, the bear thing makes sense. It could have been a big old male bear was trying to advance on a female, and she had cubs, and it turned into a bloody fight, and then they ended up separating because in the animal world, animals don't think like, oh, I'm just going to beat this guy's ass. It's I'm going to do what I have to do to protect myself, my babies, whatever it is I have to protect, and then I can't just go to a hospital. If I get injured, I die, my baby dies. It's not worth it. So once blood was shed, it could have been like the two bears said, enough is enough, we're done.
Yeah, and that's quite common for bears. Like, yeah, well, obviously everyone knows, like, you stay away from a mama bear and her cubs, and a lot of time when they attack, it's out of defense. They're not doing it because they want to hurt you. They're doing it because they're trying to protect their
instinctually. Yeah, you're a threat to their cubs.
Yeah, otherwise they would probably just run away. Like, they don't want anything to do with you. But yeah, I guess maybe like a similar thing to like those lions, that I'm sure there are some times when a bear is just that hungry. It's just, hey, you know what? It's either you or me, and you just happen to be here, and I'm gonna eat you.
Yeah,
I think most bears. I think most bear attacks are actually, yeah, most of the time because they're scared or they feel threatened. Like, remember hearing if you see like a moose carcass that's partially buried, or like any kind of animal carcass that's partially buried, get out. Mm-hmm. Because that's a bear.
Back.
Yeah, that's a bear. Like that, it's claimed that area.
And those lions actually were in 1898. It was the man-eaters of Savo.
The ones from Africa that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
When they were building the railroads? Railroads? Oh my God, there we go. That is a fantastic movie. I think it's called Ghost in the Darkness.
Yes, it's a movie based off of the real incident where these two lions apparently killed somewhere around 100, 130 people.
And not only did they kill them, they were murdering for fun, like for sport. They literally would take their bones or carcasses back into their cave, and they found like a big pile of human bones in there. Like, they were keeping them. It's creepy.
Yeah.
And puppy quiet.
I know, right?
Well, that's like, since we just kind of shifted topic on creatures killing people. Have you ever heard of Gustav, the crocodile from South Africa?
Is that the? I remember hearing that there's a community that I think it's something like 70 or 80% of the people have like missing limbs, like hand, arms, feet. Like, they're all getting screwed up by like alligators. Like, they're actively not actively hunting people, but.
Well, there's a Nile crocodile in Burundi called Gustav, which is like, I guess it's a name that was given to this crocodile for having like a godlike, near mythical status. Because rumor is this single crocodile has killed up to 300 people.
Holy shit.
This crocodile can be identified because it's significantly larger than the other crocodiles around it, somewhere around 20 feet or so. They estimated him to be about 2,000 pounds. And you can also tell which one is Gustav because he has wounds that have healed from weapons, including shotguns. Like, he has a scar, I think it's on the back of his head, where somebody shot him with a shotgun. He survived, and he now has a scar on the back of his head where, the shotgun wound had healed.
Oh my God.
There was a documentary where they tried to capture him, and they built this gigantic, like 30-foot long steel titanium cage, and they put a live goat in the cage. It took 2 nights. And they think it's because, since Gustav has had so much interaction with people, he knows when they're trying to catch him. Because obviously, if you have an animal that's this much of a menace, people are going to go out and try to, eradicate said menace. So it took 2 nights, from what I understand, and he finally crawled up into the cage, and by some, I'm only saying this as a miracle for the crocodile, is the weather got kind of stormy the night that he crawled in that cage, and one of the cameras failed. Well, the next morning when they came back to the cage, the goat was gone, and there was a large portion of this titanium cage that was completely destroyed, and Gustav was not inside the cage.
Oh my god.
You should look up Gustav.
I'm looking him up right now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Those are like, if anyone says like, oh, chickens are dinosaurs, no. Sharks and alligators, crocodiles, those type of large reptilians, those are
in general.
Those are real life dinosaurs. Like, you want us, like, they're basically unchanged from what, 500 million years ago. I think sharks have gotten smaller, but they're basically the same creature. They're just insane.
Yes, they've kept a very similar body plan, and they've fulfilled the same niche for such a long time. Sharks are one of those animals that, during their evolution, they have successfully filled multiple niches, and that's what's made them so successful. Their only biggest downfall and what could potentially cause their extinction would be humans. They've evolved to survive in multiple environments with multiple food sources through thick and thin, made it through the test of time, and then, man showed up and we're harvesting them by the thousands every day.
Well, I think like a lot of the tide has turned on sharks. Like, people used to, have that kind of thing. Oh, sharks are big and scary. I think the only one that will actually attack people is a tiger shark.
And also a bull shark.
Tiger sharks are pretty vicious, yes. And tiger sharks are freshwater sharks. They're not saltwater. So, ugh.
Actually, that's partially correct. Bull sharks are the ones that are known to swim upstream into freshwater and be able to survive for long periods of time. Tigers are more saltwater coastal, like warm coastal sharks. So they're found mostly around like Cuba, South America, Florida, Mexico, in those more warm temperate waters. But bull sharks are the ones that are known to swim upstream.
Oh, okay. So it's the bull shark that can be saltwater or freshwater?
Yes.
Okay. My mistake then.
So and like I said, a lot of things have changed with regards to the image of sharks. Like, they understand, like, they're intelligent creatures, and if they're attacking you, like 99% of the time, it's not on purpose. It's accident. They don't want people. They want seals.
Are you trying to tell us that we look like seals to them?
So pull up a human on laying down on a surfboard.
Yeah, they look
from underneath, looking up, and then look at a seal from underneath, looking up. It's easy.
Fair enough, yeah.
For humans to distinguish that that's a human, but for a shark, the silhouette is a silhouette. Like, I'm not saying that they're unintelligent by any means. All animals are smart. They're only smart as they need to be, though. So sharks have not adapted to be able to identify, oh, that's a human being. What Tyler's saying. Enough. Yeah, and so, like, kind of elaborating on what Tyler's saying is, like, they did a study on great white sharks and their ability to identify and how they identify things. Well, they have sensors around their snouts. And again, going back to kind of elaborating on what Tyler said, is that 9 times out of 10, if a great white shark attacks a person, they don't have hands to be able to reach out and touch you. So if they don't, oh my gosh, what is this? Let me, how you get curious. What does this feel like? What does that feel like? Especially as we're kids, we experience something we've never seen before. What is this rock? They pick up the rock and, okay, so it's a rock. Well, a shark doesn't have that ability. So what does a shark do? The closest thing that they have to a sensory, like a physical touching sensory organ, is their jaws. So when they bite down on somebody, number one, they don't know what it is, so they're trying to figure it out. Number two, sharks don't have a gag reflex. So once they bite, I don't think that they realize how strong of a bite that they have. They're just grabbing onto it. Well, I don't know what it is. But then once they bite you, whatever was bit in your hand, your calf muscle, your entire leg, part of your torso, it's already swallowed.
Yeah,
they can't spit it out.
Yeah, as far as my understanding goes, I guess, regarding those types of sharks is like, it's, what do they call it? It's like an exploratory bite. I don't think that's actually what they call it, but that's whatever. That's what I'm calling it. So they
I
would.
think it is actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they'll bite and then they release. They're like, oh fuck, I don't like this, and then normally the attack will stop. But yeah.
Do you ever wonder if they like accidentally bite into us? Like they accidentally bite into a human? They're like, ugh, sushi, gross. It's raw.
It's funny you say that because I watch a lot of times. I watch like videos where people do like voiceovers of like animals and stuff, and it just sits there like some of the things that some of the commentators say, and then what the animals are doing. It makes you think. Like, do you think that the animals are actually thinking something similar to that?
Yeah, 100%.
Like exactly what you said. Like the shark swims up, it's like, oh, what the hell is that? Oh, I'm gonna go, take a test bite. Let's go see what this is. Oh shit. Ugh.
Gross. Ew. People.
Well, I remember seeing a thing, I guess, with like with orca whales that they will actually just, when they attack sharks, so they'll just attack they'll attack their liver, and then they'll just let the shark sink to the bottom and die. Like, I think orcas are probably orcas, beluga whales. I think they're some of the smartest creatures in the ocean. Well, dolphins too, but like those things are like, anyone that says like a orca is like a killer shark is dumb. You're dumb.
Orcas are easily the kings of the ocean. Easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see videos of orcas swimming up to dolphins or stingrays, seals, slapping them. Like they'll spin upside down and then use their tail and like flip the stingray or the seal out of the water for no reason. They don't kill it. They don't eat it. They just flip it out of the water for about 20, 30 minutes and they just all swim away.
I remember seeing one, maybe it's a fish that I'm thinking of, but it does something. I can't remember if it's with its tail, or maybe I'm thinking of like an orca whale. But when they flip their tail so fast, it'll knock a fish out.
And then they play with the corpse. Not so much corpse, but the life, the knocked out body.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was orcas, but maybe I'm thinking of a different fish or some kind of thing that does something like that, like a
whale shark that does that.
Well, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I can't think of the correct term for that fin on the tail, but the top fin on its tail is extremely elongated and exaggerated, and it like literally flicks its tail and will knock out a fish.
maybe that's it.
I whip my tail back and forth. I whip my tail.
Well, so you're like big time into like dinosaurs and stuff. So give me some cool stuff on dinosaurs.
Okay, so have you guys seen the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom? Have you seen that movie?
Kim, have we seen that movie?
It's the Jurassic Park movie where the volcano goes off and they're on the island to try to save the dinosaurs, and they bring them back to the mainland, and then they're like auctioning them off in an underground facility. And
was this part of one of the older ones or part of one of the newer ones?
It's the second installment in the newer.
Oh, I must have
newer
seen
franchise.
it. I must have seen it, but it's just not ringing a bell for whatever reason.
So it's okay. So it's difficult to describe this particular theropod that I'd like to talk about to people who are completely unfamiliar. If you've seen Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, or at least seen a trailer of it, possibly merchandise, you'll recognize this animal. It's a typical theropod, which is a carnivorous, bipedal dinosaur, and it has two horns over its eyes, making it look like kind of like a bull.
Oh, okay.
It is called the Carnotaurus, and it has gained popularity recently due to not just Jurassic World, but also a lot of publishings that have come out recently about it with some new information regarding this particular animal, but also has a lot to do with information that has been kind of hit and miss about dinosaurs for a while. I'm sure Kim's looking up Carnotaurus right now to see what it looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cretaceous period carnivore. It was found in Argentina back in 1984 and was published in 1985 and then made official in 1990. What makes this animal so interesting is that not only was it the first of its kind discovered in the area that it was discovered in, but when they were excavating it out of the sandstone, there were skin impressions. Sandstone, when it preserves, is very similar to concrete. So what's preserved in it gets relatively preserved well. This animal is there's only one specimen that has ever been found. And what makes it interesting is that the skin impressions, and why I wanted to bring this up is because there's a huge debate that's been going on for a while now that dinosaurs had feathers.
Yeah.
And before listeners jump on me about, here we go, we're going to argue about the feather. I think that a lot of species we still don't know. There's evidence based on relatives of certain species like Tyrannosaurs. Tyler and I kind of spoke off air a little bit that Tyrannosaurs fall under the Coelurosaurs, which are very bird-like. So there's a lot of evidence with some of the species there that they could have had feathers or proto-feathers. But what makes Carnotaurus interesting is it did not show signs of feathers at all. They went back to the original dig site because at the time, Jose Bonaparte, no pun intended, that is his literal name, yes, when he first discovered Carnotaurus during the excavation, he didn't realize that around the bones, especially like the skull, there were skin impressions still preserved there. So, of course, during the excavation, chipped a lot of that off. So we only know about the skin impressions around the skull from two pictures that I want to say was 2019. Suddenly just surfaced out of nowhere, showing Bonaparte holding the skull of Carnotaurus, which if you can find that picture, it's interesting and somewhat disturbing because it looks like he's holding a legit, like, mummified dinosaur skull.
Okay, what was that guy's name again?
Jose Bonaparte.
No relation to Napoleon.
Yeah.
Jose Bonaparte. Bonaparte.
Yeah, when he excavated Carnotaurus, he did a great job of tearing the bones apart. But
like I'm looking at these pictures and okay, I think I found it.
Yeah.
Jesus, look at how big that thing is.
Right. Are you looking at the one with him? He's wearing like a white hat.
No, I see he's like wearing I don't know, looks like a green shirt, but everything's kind of through a green filter. But this thing's arms are so messed up looking. Like you would almost think.
I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, that was another thing I was going to bring up about this particular animal. It is a creature that has the smallest arms to body size of all dinosaurs that we know of. Where everybody assumes that Tyrannosaurus, which I kind of mentioned to Kim earlier today, that Tyrannosaurus was not necessarily a topic I wanted to bring up right away because Tyrannosaurus is an animal that everybody's familiar with. Everybody knows a lot about it. And in a lot of circumstances, it's a species that's Tyrannosaurus rex in general is an animal that is used, I would say, partially as clickbait, where let's compare this to Tyrannosaurus rex, or they made a discovery in the same area as Tyrannosaurus rex. And if we're going to talk about Tyrannosaurus rex, I'd rather do, a segment or a podcast on just Tyrannosaurus rex because there's a lot to talk about there. But getting back on the arm topic, what's really interesting is that Carnotaurus is an animal that there's a lot of evidence to show that even though it was a estimated 30-foot long animal. It could run. Now, these are just estimations. We don't obviously know for sure. But there's a lot of evidence showing that Carnotaurus could run up to speeds of 30 to 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
That's a big animal moving very fast, but it also tells us a lot about the environment that it lived in. It also tells a lot about what it was doing, what it was hunting, things like that. Most likely, it was an animal that lived in floodplains, and the reason why is because, and I'll get back to the arms in a second. This is relevant. I'm not trying to go
They're
everywhere.
so tiny. Oh my God. Carry on.
So when we look at the caudal vertebrae in its tail, they're extremely different from what we see in other theropods, in that it has two really long rods that stick up. And there's a lot of muscle scarring on the bottom side of that, meaning that there was a lot of muscle attached to those caudal vertebrae, which would have meant that Carnotaurus, if you were looking at it in the flesh, Carnotaurus is kind of thick.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So
Well, I guess, these artist renditions of it.
yes, I mean, one of them, one of the articles doesn't show so much the musculature. It does in the neck, which is where I was going to go with the arms of this conversation, but not so much on the tail. The tail, because of the way that the vertebrae were, that amount of muscle would have made a lot of muscle to the back of the leg, which would have made it, when it moved, it had a lot of pushing power, indicating it probably moved very fast. But the only downside to this is with those tall rods running down the spine and the tail to apply that extra muscle, the tail would have been relatively stiff, where you see animals like, Allosaurus or Tyrannosaurus. I just said I didn't want to go there, but here we go. They would move in a very snake-like posture. So if T-Rex was running, or if an Allosaurus was running, or most other theropods that were not in the group of Carnotauridae or Abelosauridae, which is it's like the sister family to Carnotaurus. We'll get into that another day, but if they would have been running, they could have done almost like a snake-like motion where the whole body would, I guess, pivot and angle itself when it went to turn. So it would turn relatively quickly, where Carnotaurus, having that stiff, long, muscular tail, it would have had a much wider turn, showing that it probably was a very fast mover, but not very maneuverable. So it's, it could burst out with a lot of speed, but if it had to make
Uh-oh. Did you die?
environment it possibly lived in, which would have been very much floodplains.
You cut out for a sec there. Do you want to just back it up a little bit? You're saying could move very fast, but if it
could not turn. Yeah, it could not turn very well, because the way that the vertebrae were fused in its tail, the vertebrae would have been very close together to support those rods that allowed extra muscle to attach to allow the legs to move extremely fast. And because of that, its tail would not have been able to bend side to side as well as other theropods. So it would have had a much wider turn. And why this is relevant to the arms is because it's believed that the arms were so small to make up for extra muscle attached to the shoulder blades to support its neck, meaning that it probably did a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it was very straightforward. So when it hunted something, it ran it down. It wasn't like an ambush hunter, and those muscles would help keep its head stable when it went to bite something. And in return, it needed less muscle for the arms, and over time would have ended up almost entirely losing its arms because it had no use for it. It put all of its musculature into its its tail, its back legs, and then its neck. And the arms would have been, I mean, we don't know entirely, because the specimen that we found was very fragmentary, not in a whole, but the certain pieces of certain parts of the skeletal structure were not lined up entirely. So we don't know exactly the positioning, like if the arms faced backwards, if they stuck outwards. For what little bit of arms they have, we don't really know that. But just kind of interesting, a very interesting creature. And again, going back to originally why I wanted to bring this animal up, it was because they actually went back this year, either late last year, early this year. They went back to the dig site and they went back into the same excavation site and they found more skin impressions. So your common depiction of Carnotaurus of having these like scoots and all these alligator-like plates running down its back is not entirely accurate, because what little bit of skin impressions we had, the paleo artists at the time took what they had of the skin impressions and gave it that image, where we now find that it had more kind of, I want to say, somewhat osteoderms, more towards its side, less than on its back, which is interesting and confusing of why it would have had not so much armor like an alligator, but a similar texture, but on its sides, versus like you can see in many depictions of the animal having like all the way up and very long, easy term for it would be spikes running down its back.
Yeah. It reminds me of my algae eaters. My plecos, they got spikes running down them. That's what it reminds me of. So do you think that the arms are more of a like stabilizing agent then, to kind of, because the way that the depiction, or I guess the way that the body is shaped, like it leans so much forward, right? So do you think it's more kind of just to help stabilize it? Because I can't see.
Well,
that makes one crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Carnotaurus falls into a group of animals that are within Abelosaur. It was an Abelosaur, which is going further back, is a part of Ceratosauridae. And Ceratosauridae was an animal that had horns on its face, and like the osteoderms and the scoots running down its back, and it actually had relatively small arms as well. So it seems like it's vestigial evolution that over time, specifically in an animal like Carnotaurus, it just lost its reason to hold on to things. It lost its reason to have arms and made up for it by again applying more of its muscle, not so much into its arms, but into its neck and its tail for speed, stability, and also I guess a lot of the muscle in the neck would have been to help it with its bite, because Carnotaurus had relatively weak teeth, but it made up for it by having more raw power in its bite. Like it did not bite anywhere near, like, here we go, bringing it up again, Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it's can't avoid it. But it was, when it opened its mouth, the gape of its mouth, it actually could open the maxilla as well as the mandible, which would be the top jaw, and the lower jaw would be able to open up to create more of a bite. So it's almost theorized that with the neck muscle, it would have like raised its head, gaped its mouth, and then bit down that way, with like it's like a motion of the head going down at the same time to help it apply more force. Because if the teeth were not strong enough to pierce flesh of other animals, as well as what maybe some other predators could do, it made up for that with its bite.
So I remember seeing with I think it was with, well, sorry, I'm bringing it up with the T-Rex, that it possibly, once it got bigger, it actually ended up becoming more of a scavenger. It was more like a carrion predator as opposed to an actual like predatory hunter, just because it got so big and it was more lumbering as opposed to agile. And I think it had something to do, like its offspring would actually more do the hunting, and then the big ones would come and eat, and then that was kind of that type of cycle.
There's a lot of evidence to support that, and we see it in other tyrannosaurs. Like Albertosaurus is a good example. There's a location where there's evidence of a ceratopsid dinosaur that had fallen into a river and drowned, and it's theorized that a group of Albertosaurus were responsible for this. And in this discovery, the group of Albertosaurus were all different sized, indicating they were all different ages.
Right.
And, you know, especially in dinosaurs, you wouldn't see that too much if it was a species that was more prone to cannibalizing each other. Why would so many of them be gathered together in the same place if they were going to have to worry about each other? So it brought upon a theory that dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus rex, being, you know, the latest tyrannosaur species, would have contributed a lot of its behavior in a very similar way. Again, Tyrannosaurus is a very interesting animal, and it's highly debated because once we make a discovery about it, there's a lot of so every time we discover something, there's more questions. Mm-hmm. You finally answer one, but then, you know, 3 more questions pop up. And now, of course, you get a lot of opinions on it. You get a lot of people with different perspectives on it. There's a lot of people that speculate that Tyrannosaurus had notches in the back side of its teeth that would build up bacteria from each time it killed something. The meat would stick in these little notches in the back of the teeth and make it have, you know, a poisonous bite like a Komodo dragon. There's a theory going around like that. And I mean, to a degree, it doesn't make sense, but it does.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, you have such a large animal. You have an animal that pushes 40 feet long. I mean, look at Tyrannosaurus Sue. That's a 40-foot long Tyrannosaurus rex to be specific. And how would something that big move fast enough to catch something unless it was able to ambush, bite it, and, you know, be able to wait for it to die?
Yeah.
On top of a bite force that could crush a car, I mean, if an adult Tyrannosaurus rex bit down on you, wherever it bit is now missing from your body. It's gone. So you're talking about massive blood loss. I mean, and that's assuming you survive. Massive blood loss, and then you add this poisonous bite to it. Like,
it's almost unnecessary. Like, it'd be, yeah. Well, and I'm looking at like the Albertosaurus and the hell's that? The fuck's that thing called? The
Carnotaurus.
Yeah. They look very similar in their, like, are they from the same time period, or is one precedes the other?
So Carnotaurus was a late Cretaceous animal, and it lived in Argentina, and Albertosaurus was an early Cretaceous. So Albertosaurus was around before.
Okay.
Yeah, and they lived separately, so they never actually came in contact with each other.
That's weird that they have similar kind of features to each other, like that same kind of, like, that hood over the eyes kind of thing.
Yes,
but definitely,
yeah.
the Carnosaurus was more, well, it looked like something that was designed almost like for war, as opposed to.
Well, again, you gotta bring up, you know, the evolution. You know, why did it evolve that way? And the only other animal that we have found so far that lived in the same time frame is a species called the Allosaurus, which was also a belosaurid. Now, because you said they look kind of similar in certain attributes, yeah, they do, and it's easy to identify Carnotaurus as, you know, your generic, you know, however you want to describe that, generic theropod. But they evolved from separate lineages. Again, tyrannosaurs are Silurians, and the abelosaurids come from a different clade than you got Abelosauridae, and then you have the Silurians, where Abelosauridae comes from the Ceratosauridae, which was a separate. They evolved separately and went 2 different directions. So the best way to describe it is you have your avian dinosaurs and your non-avian dinosaurs. You have your ones that are more similar to birds, and they have feathers, evidence of feathers, protofeathers, quills, and then you have your ones that are non-avian and they do not have evidence of feathers and quills and protofeathers.
Okay, so like I guess the T-Rex's lineage is more akin to bird, as opposed to like the Albertosaurus is more akin to like a reptile.
No, because Albertosaurus is still a tyrannosaur. It's a predecessor. Yeah, Albertosaurus is a predecessor to Tyrannosaurus Rex. So it was an animal that was around before T-Rex had evolved.
Okay.
Really?
Okay.
Yes,
Well, ain't
Tyrannosaurus
that
Rex
something?
was very late Cretaceous. It's interesting since we've gone in this direction. It's interesting to see that the different time periods of which dinosaurs were alive, from early dinosaurs in the early Triassic to the dinosaurs that were in the Jurassic, and then the ones that were in the Cretaceous. We see to an extent there's patterns. Where, as an example, and this is I didn't really want to get into Tyrannosaur, but here we go. We're there. So tyrannosaurs in a whole. We're just going to say tyrannosaurs. We're not going to get too technical here. We'll do that. We'll do that in another podcast. Tyrannosaurs on a whole, when they first had evolved, there's evidence showing that they had started out in Asia with a species called guanlong. It was an Asian tyrannosaur. It was very small, and it was not the top predator of its time. What's interesting about tyrannosaurs, and we're going to jump a lot of species here because there's a lot of tyrannosaurs. There's new ones that have just been discovered. I mean, we brought up the Albertosaurus because of the pack hunting mentality, that it's a possible trait that tyrannosaurs had. But if we look at tyrannosaurs through their evolution, which I want to say was the early Jurassic, is when I want to say that's when guanlong first had showed up in the fossil record. But being the predecessor to tyrannosaurs and being the first tyrannosaur, we look at how they evolved over the time periods, and they were at the bottom of the food chain for such a long time. They were not the big, bad, dominant predator that we see in Tyrannosaurus Rex. And what's interesting is that all of the species that filled those niches, however you want to say it.
Niches get stitches.
Okay, we're gonna say niches then. We're going with niches. I don't need any more stitches. So we see that the animals that fulfilled all these different niches in the timelines, some of them came, some of them went, some of them advanced and became bigger, some of them, downsized, where Tyrannosaurus for such a long time stayed in the same spot of just being the small predators that just, sprinted around running, eating small mammals, lizards, smaller dinosaur species. And then all of a sudden, in the Cretaceous period, the Tyrannosaurs pretty much, more or less, took over to the point where Tyrannosaurus Rex itself. There's an article, I'll have to find it and send it to you, Kim, but there's an article that came out suggesting that the reason why we do not see any other large carnivorous dinosaurs during the late Cretaceous period in North America, minus Tyrannosaurus Rex, is because Tyrannosaurs eventually evolved to fill all the niches of all the other predators and did it better to the point where they, during their life cycle, would fulfill each niche to the point where nothing else could compete. So in other words, Tyrannosaurus Rex would start its life as a chick, fulfilling, the smaller dinosaur eating insects, small lizards, small mammals. It would grow to, an adolescent or a juvenile, and it would fill a slightly different niche. And then it would become, a subadult. And now you're talking about an animal that it has a stronger bite force, but it still has a decent enough speed that it could run down medium-sized prey. And it was just bad enough that nothing else could really compete with it. And then if it made it to adulthood and became a full-grown adult, realistically, the only thing Tyrannosaurus really, a full-grown Tyrannosaurus Rex in its time period, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, the Giganotosaurus, and oh, well, the Spinosaurus. Realistically, for the time frame and the location that Tyrannosaurus Rex was alive, the only thing that it really had to worry about, besides making a bad decision, like trying to take down a Triceratops by itself, would be another Tyrannosaurus Rex. And it's just interesting to see that even their life stages as a Rex in a whole, they filled each niche on their own.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at some of the, I guess some of the depictions of each period, and it seems like earlier the creatures were larger. Like, yeah, you had your small ones, but it almost seemed like it was more the bigger ones survived, and then as it got later, it was more, they were smaller in terms of size. And I guess you kind of bringing up the thing about, them filling, a need for almost each stage of their life. It would almost, I think it would almost lend to the idea that, in their later stages of life, that they were just too big. I've heard some things that they were, in their once they're in like full adulthood, that they were just too big and just too clumsy. Like, what are they, like, obviously they had that bite force, opposed to the Carnosaurus, which was more, I'm not sure what you would consider, like, that's almost like I would almost picture that more like a shark's bite as opposed to an alligator's bite. Like a shark's bite, yeah, there's still a lot of power. Like, I'm sure the Carnosaurus has still a fuck ton of power compared to anything that we have today, obviously. But in terms, say, if you want to like compare like a Tyrannosaurus to a Carnosaurus in terms of maybe utility, I would say a Tyrannosaurus is more akin to how an alligator's bite is just raw, just power. And their closing force is just insanely strong, as opposed to the Carnosaurus, which is more, I don't know more like it can cut through a predator's hide or its skin easier.
No, you are correct, because when you look at Tyrannosaurus's teeth, they're railroad stakes.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, I mean, that's why I made the statement earlier, if a Tyrannosaurus Rex bit down on you, it doesn't matter what species you are, how big you are, if it latches down on you, that part is gone. Mm-hmm. Either that, or you're going to get stuck in place, and in the struggle of trying to get away from it, you're going to end up ripping your own arm off. If the bite force alone didn't take it off right off the bat. Where, yes, Carnotaurus was more, I would say, you use the term like more of a utility. Yeah, the two creatures never came in contact with each other, and that's why I brought up, the interesting fact that Tyrannosaurus Rex filled different niches during its growth cycle, because at one point it was at a stage where maybe it did not have the raw power of an adult Carnotaurus, but it could keep up the pace. So at the time, in the location, there was nothing that could compete with that in the area of where the Tyrannosaurus Rex was. But being a specialized predator like Carnotaurus, that's also why Carnotaurus, during its time being alive, until we have more specimens or newer specimens of other animals that were alive side by side with Carnotaurus, as of right now, it was its apex predator in its location.
So, is there any evidence to suggest, like with a Carnotaurus, that it was more like a pack animal, or was it more a solitary hunter?
Realistically, there's not a lot of evidence, because we've only ever found one specimen.
Right.
Where Tyrannosaurus Rex, we have hundreds of specimens, from juveniles all the way up to adults. But what's interesting is we don't find as many full-grown adult Tyrannosaurs, which I bring that up because of the comment that you made. Once a Tyrannosaurus Rex gets full size, yeah, it's got a massive bite force and will kill, becomes completely OP. In the animal kingdom, like, what's going to compete with it other than it making a bad decision or another full-grown Tyrannosaur? Well, that's because I don't think this is just my opinion. I don't think a lot of Tyrannosaurus Rex made it to full-grown adult. I think that was relatively a rare circumstance.
Yeah, that was my kind of my assumption. Like I said, just how big they were, and then I'll see if I can find it. But Yeah, just that is like they're like I was kind of picturing like when you were describing like say like how like a T-Rex would move, it almost kind of like it would almost not lumber, but I would almost picture it as like lumbering, like it goes from one leg and then jump like kind of almost jump to the other, and then it almost has to kind of throw itself with its legs. That would be like in my vision of a something that has just massive legs. Like it's basically just teeth and legs. Like that's
Pretty much.
Well, I mean, yeah, you are right. And that's why Tyrannosaurus Rex had such small arms, is because if its arms were any longer, it'd be so incredibly top heavy, or the arms would just flat out get in the way. I mean, you look at Tyrannosaurus Rex fighting another Tyrannosaurus Rex. What's the easiest thing to go for? The arms.
Yeah.
So you have these little tiny arms because that's more detrimental to your survival. But getting back to the lumbering, I think that looking at Tyrannosaurus Rex, looking at the skeleton of an adult, I don't think it would be able to necessarily have a lumbering sprint, I think is what you were kind of envisioning. I don't think it would be able to have both feet off the ground in any at all. I think one foot would have to be on the ground at all times because this is an extremely heavy animal, being a full-grown adult.
So here was the article that I found. It was from the Institute for Creation Research, and they're kind of making the debate. I'll send it to you. That you don't have to read it now, but that kind of gives that argument that potentially like it just became too big and too slow, so that it went from being a hunter to more of a scavenger, like a carrion kind of feeder.
There was back around 2004, I want to say around 2003, 2004, Jack Horner is the paleontologist that actually proposed that idea, at least publicly, that Tyrannosaurus Rex was strictly a scavenger based on its size. And I mean, he's actually listed in the article. I'm looking over it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Horner is the one. So kudos to me. I got that right. But so it's one of those things. Not only will we not know 100% for sure, it seems likely, but at the same time, it doesn't seem likely because an animal of that size, you have to imagine how much consumption this animal has to take in order to maintain that body size, that weight, that amount of energy to move around. It would be constantly eating. And to just be able to walk around and find a corpse laying around just anywhere, I think seems unlikely to be able to support that large of an animal for what it's doing. But again, I think that it goes back on that is part of the reason why we don't see a whole lot of full adults. I think I could be incorrect, but I think that there's only 3 full-grown specimens that we found out of the hundreds that we've discovered of Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so the Carnosaurus would actually be like, ideally, like an evolutionary. I know it's not. I understand that they're two separate, almost like two separate genus altogether. But is there something that predates like the Carnosaurus, like that kind of lineage?
Yeah, it goes back to the Abelosaurids, which splits it splits up into the Majungasauridae and Carnotauridae.
Okay, Belo. Okay. Oh, God damn it. I must have spelled something wrong. I got children's clothes. So hold on. Okay. So an Abelosaurus. What? Okay, so Abelosaurus. Well, because they're showing like a Brontosaurus.
I sent you the easiest link. It's just a Wikipedia. It's just a wiki about Abilasauridae.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Again, you have your Coelurosaurians, and then you have Saurischia, which, the Abilasaurids come from Ceratosauridae, which is under the Saurischia, as a different lineage than the Coelurosaurians, which, is Tyrannosaurs. Your raptors are Coelurosaurs as well.
Okay. All right. So yeah, because I just always assumed that all of them were kind of the same, and all birds are dinosaurs, but apparently not.
Mm-hmm. If you go down to the part in the wiki where it shows the phylogeny, you'll see that Abilasauridae branches off quite a bit, to the point where even you'll notice like one of the popular Abilasaurs, Majungasaurus, is related to Carnotaurus, but not
Huge jump in
directly.
size there from that name that you just said up into the Carnotaurus. Like there's a huge jump in size. Where when you were looking at the other ones, like from the Albertosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus Rex, those ones, like you could see, they slightly were getting bigger, and certain things were kind of changing on them. But this is like a huge jump.
Well, then scroll down a little bit further and you'll see Ceratosauria, where then we get even more.
Wow.
And this is just Ceratosauria. This is not even including the lineage that contains Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So what do you think? Like, I'm kind of focused on like their arms. Like, yeah, you seen like some of them like they were kind of leaning back, but you see like those big shoulder like plates, like those shoulder muscles were
muscles attached there.
Yeah, like I'm kind of picturing almost like because like a cheetah will use their tail as like a stabilizer. So would that kind of become more, I guess, what that tail was designed for? Is it just like explosive kind of power, like a sprinter as opposed to a like a marathon runner?
No, you nailed it. It's very explosive, but now being able to run a marathon, we're not entirely sure. We just know that it had a lot of muscle that powered the legs to allow it to have that explosive power to at least take off very quickly. But there's a theory going around that another reason why Carnotaurus and other Abilasaurids lost their, not entirely lost, so the, vestigial evolution of, their arms being reduced to a point where they're almost entirely unusable, is to allow more muscle in the chest cavity to allow for better air intake, so it could inhale and exhale better, which would support the marathon running after it gets that burst.
Oh, okay. So it'd actually be able to sustain a bit of a trot for a while.
Yes, at least that's, I would say, as of, I want to say 2015. I don't have an article pulled up for that directly, but I want to say it was around 2015 that idea was proposed, of why the arms were also so small, and specifically Carnotaurus, which Carnotaurus of all the Abilasaurids has the smallest arms.
And it seems like it's quite a common thing, like in those types of those, like even looking like the Abilasauridae. Like a lot of them, like they seem to have that same kind of similar, I don't know, that same kind of general makeup. Like for me looking at this, like one of them, they really don't look any different from the next. Like maybe one's a little chunky muffin, and the other one's a little like,
there's
scrawny
minor
little
variations
neck
between each one. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you do see that there are some that do still have, so they can still articulate, and I would look at those as more as maybe like those kind of scavenger kind of feeders. I'd like this Mesiacosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
It still has quite those prominent, front feet or front, I don't know, hands, even though they're, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, it also has to do a lot with, you see this in animals today. I mean, you brought up a cheetah, so let's talk about big cats. You have jaguars, you have leopards, you have lions, you have technically mountain lions are not actually a big cat. They're actually more closely genetically to house cats. So they're kind of excluded. Yeah. Yep. Which actually, believe it or not, cheetahs are actually more closely related to house cats than they are other big cats. Tigers, jaguars, leopards, and lions are the mains. And I want to say possibly a snow leopard, but they're all similar in some ways, but they're all different based off of their environment. Again, we're going to go back to the niche that they fill in their environment. So you see that in maybe it's just an aspect of dinosaurs you've never thought about before. But yes, they could all be very similar. So we have all these animals here, like you brought up the Mesiacosaurus and the Carnotaurus, and we mentioned Majungasaurus. In some ways, they're anatomically similar, but they're also somewhat different. So because they're all under Ceratosauria, you have Carnotaurus that it shows evidence of being a track runner, bursting out with a huge, raw power and just speed, and be able to maintain that speed for a while. Or then you have like the Majungasaurus, which does not have that. It has shorter legs. It has more of a stockier build, a little bit more heavy set than said Carnotaurus. So Majungasaurus probably would not have been able to, speed run the way that a Carnotaurus would. Not that it wasn't successful in its environment. It just didn't have the need to fulfill that particular role in its environment. It was successful doing something else. And why I bring up the big cats is because, so you have, we'll bring up the two true big cats. We'll bring up the leopard and the lion. So anatomically, you look at their skeleton, they're very, very similar, but they're very different when you look at the roles that they play in their environment. You have leopards that can climb trees, they're ambush predators, and then you have lions that are pack predators, and it's very rare that they climb trees because they're not designed for it. Where you look at a leopard, it can bolt up a tree, lightning fast, where a lion kind of stands around, jumps up, holds the tree, tries to get a hold, jumps down, walks around it, and then finally finds a place where it can at least get its footing, and then makes an attempt. But the leopard just goes straight up. I mean, that's an evolutionary thing that the leopard did to maintain its position, its role in its environment, and what has made it successful to why it's alive today.
What a beautiful animal. Fuck, are they beautiful?
All animals are beautiful.
Leopards, they're absolutely beautiful.
I mean, you look at jaguars,
like the
too.
Black Panther. Black Panthers are, I believe they're just black leopards. Like you can actually see the spots on them too. It's really cool.
Yeah, they have a.
Oh Jesus! What the fuck? I searched Black Panther and I got a bunch of fucking cartoon porn.
Boy. Let's search history immediately.
What the hell? Yeah, okay, so I get, that would make a lot of sense why there's slight variations. Well, and I guess with the, unless actually seeing, I guess, comparison for size, to me, one thing, scale size, okay, well, to me, those things are the same size, which I'm sure if you actually looked at them compared, in a scale, that they actually are probably vastly different in size, I would assume, or at least separated enough in geographically speaking that they're that they never interacted. That would be my assumption anyway, but
oh, you're absolutely right. Again, a lot of what we find on the internet is going to be, artists' renditions, and especially on a genetic mapping like this one. You're looking at Ceratosauria, and you see, Ceratosaurus, you see Mesiacosaurus, Majungasaurus, Carnotaurus. The little icon representing it is all going to be about the same size to represent the animal, at least for this picture. But when you actually go and look at the said animal anatomically, you look at their skeletons, you'll see differences.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, those things are. I don't know. I always liked them as a kid, and then I grew up and totally forgot that. Well, I didn't forget that dinosaurs were a thing, but.
Well, I think that a lot of people grow out of how interesting and how intriguing dinosaurs can actually be. I think that's a big part of it. At a certain point, they become irrelevant for a lot of people because we get focused on other things, and we fall out of learning when there is still so much to learn about it. But that's what I'm here for, to bring you back, pull the reins back in.
I know when I was younger, I was into dinosaurs too. One of my huge things was sharks. I used to know literally every shark. I knew all about them. I don't remember a lot of it anymore, but those were like the two things that I was really into, was dinosaurs and sharks.
Which is awesome, because sharks are very, very interesting as well.
Yeah, like I said, I think they actually haven't evolved really that much since dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Not too much. They've like we mentioned before earlier in the podcast, is that sharks, they pretty much have not changed in again, the niche that they fill in the ocean. They've relatively kept the same body plan. They still fulfill certain aspects of the ocean. You've got your deep water sharks. You have your extremely deep sharks, like your goblin shark, or I believe it's the basking shark. The goblin shark is crazy.
It's so fucked up.
And a lot of people don't realize that they actually get up to 13 feet long. They can get great white size.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those things
not as large as the largest great white, but definitely they can get in that range. That 13 foot, I mean, that's a big animal.
Yeah, those things are ugly as all hell.
What is?
The goblin shark.
Yeah, those are.
That's the one with the horn on the nose, and its mouth ejects.
Yeah,
the whole jaw pops out.
Yeah, they are. So was a megalodon? Were they actually real, or?
Yes, it was a real animal. It was definitely a real animal, and no, they are not alive today. There's no way that they could be alive today.
But in the deep sea, where all the other aliens are.
See, there's a lot of people that speculate that, but you got to look back, and here's where we go back into the paleontology aspect of it, is that there's a lot of evidence showing that megalodon, and this is based off a location where the teeth are found. You go back and look in the environments, and a lot of the areas similar, or not similar, excuse me, but you look at other, taxes that were in the area at the time, and you find that megalodon, despite its huge size, actually lived in relatively shallower, warmer coastal waters.
So it'd almost be like a great white.
Negative. Great whites are deep sea cold water sharks.
Oh, are they?
Yes, and the megalodon and the great white shark, a lot of people believe that they're related. They're actually not. They're very different in a lot of ways. How, as an example, we discussed Carnotaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex are different. Yes, they're both dinosaurs. So yes, both the great white and the megalodon are sharks, but they evolved differently, and they're from different, their phylogeny is different. And it's believed nowadays that the megalodon actually went extinct because it could not compete with the great white. Great white was smaller, it was more agile, it could catch more prey, and it needed less food to survive. Where you have the megalodon, a very large animal, 40 plus feet long, estimated to be around 50 feet long at times. That's a lot of food. We talked about Tyrannosaurus Rex possibly being a scavenger. Well, I think that we don't find a lot of adult tyrannosaurs because they either didn't make it that far, or once they did, they starved to death and died because they just couldn't catch anything. They were so big and bad and so OP that, well, you were actually OP against your own self.
I'm looking at some pictures of a megalodon's mouth, and it is mind blowing. So if we actually pumped more oxygen, so if we plant a bunch of trees, we might be able to bring this back. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a phylogeny on Megalodon. I forget what it's most closely related to.
Yeah, because all the pictures show it's basically just a giant great white, which obviously we'll never know, but
no, but certain aspects of it, like you look at the shape of the teeth and you look at like certain, parts of the jaw, it's more similar with trying to find it because I don't want to say it and be entirely wrong.
There's a picture with like 6 dudes sitting in the mouth of a megalodon. Whether it's accurate or not, but like that's huge.
Or it could be forced perspective, like trying to make it look bigger than it actually is. So I don't know. Like you see some people are like it looks big. Like obviously it looks quite large. And then
according to
some it's barely one person can fit in it. So I don't know if it's a forced perspective to make it look bigger than it actually was.
Well, according to this one photo that I'm looking at, it's showing that the great white shark is about 15 feet long, and it's showing the megalodon is 65 feet long. Like that is
65.
Massive difference.
Yeah, like that is. Can you imagine seeing that thing?
The eye, yeah, that's another one of those. Just like the Portlock creature. That's a hell no.
That is holy shit.
Right?
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I think I would probably die of fright if I see something swimming towards me. That'd be it. I would die.
That was actually one thing that I found really interesting. Like with great whites, like they're such perfect hunters for their environment. Like their skin, they'll I think they typically attack from like the bottom, so they'll come up from underneath you and attack because their skin is just so perfectly camouflaged for the water. And then even underneath it, even though it's white, like it's like that is. So when people say like, well, I think evolutionary, like, well, why does this creature survive and this one doesn't? It full on has to do with something happens in the evolution. I'm sure original sharks weren't like a gray and a white. I'm sure they were maybe like a black and a white, almost like an orca or something. But they're the one that survived was the one that had this defect initially that was more gray than white, and then it kind of reached that point where, okay, this works, and then all the other ones kind of die off. So it's
actually quite true.
Damn right, it's true. I'm
great whites.
Genius.
Yes, you're very smart. Great whites always look like they're like giving you this like like laugh grin thing when you look at them like from the side frontish. Like I can just 100% visualize like a hey there, you look tasty.
Like they're just kind of like cheesing on you, like yeah, you're fucked up.
Right.
So that's where I kind of think, like in terms of like going back to like dinosaurs, is just one type of defect just changes the whole course of this animal. That either makes it, maybe the arm thing, like the bigger rib cage and the ability to inhale more air to supply that oxygen to those muscles, so that they could run these longer distances. And just, it could be something as simple as that. Like its rib cage could be larger. Just, even if it's like 2 or 3%, okay, well, that's 2 or 3% more you got in the tank than Joe Blow behind you now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that, and like, I mean, we've talked about like, you know, evolutionary, like, well, you know, why are people evolutionary speaking, like, it takes a long time for things to happen. Well, typically, like, most things that have like a genetic defect, like, no offense to, like, you know, handicapped people, but back in like, you know, 10,000-12,000 years ago, even closer than that, they were cast aside. So it was, you know, unfortunately, it was the survival of the fittest. Well, if you were deformed in some way, well, you get left behind. So, and
all it takes is that defect to allow you to overcome a challenge that perhaps somebody else couldn't, and now you pass that genetic on.
Yeah, like I know. Well, I know it's a minor thing, but like blue eyes was considered a genetic defect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
but it was a desired trait, and that's why it's so common now.
Yeah.
It's because the blue eyes was deemed as being more attractive, and it was something that, you know, sorry for everyone to make this sound like, you know, we're breeding dogs, but, you know, that was a trait that people wanted, and that's what they aimed for, you know. So they were looking for a partner with blue eyes, just so that way they could, you know, continue that on to where it became such a common thing now. But blue eyes are actually very unbeneficial.
Mm-hmm.
They get damaged the most by ultraviolet light from the sun.
Well, apparently we loved it so much that we kind of started a war on it.
And we're willing to go blind for it, mentally and physically.
Oh, I meant more like, I meant like
I know what you're referring to. I know where you were going with that. I was just trying to, no pun intended, blindside it.
Yeah, and that's and we've still continued to evolve. Like, there are still, like, I'm sure in a couple of years, like, people in maybe 1,000 years are going to look very different. Like you can see the average person's height. We've gotten taller and taller and taller. Like, you can look at NFL players in like the 1910, like, let's just say like the early 1900s. The average player was like 160, 180 pounds. Today, they're like 300 pounds, and they're gigantic monsters. Like, they are freaks of nature. And I don't mean that as a pejorative. Like, they are insanely big, insanely strong, and insanely fast.
Yeah.
Like if we, evolutionarily speaking, they could use us as like as a condom to fuck some other big giant dude.
Oh my god, that mental image of that one.
Didn't see that going in that direction, but okay.
That's my husband.
I was going to say the more obvious evolution that humans have undergone in just the last 1,000 years is lactose intolerance.
Yeah.
It's an internal evolution, but it is an evolutionary trait.
Yeah, African people, black people, black lives, I know, sorry. But
I gotta get out of here.
But black people are typically lactose intolerant. Other, like, white people aren't lactose intolerant. Wait, did I say that backwards?
No, it's mostly a lot of European races are less likely to be lactose intolerant because at one point that's what they relied on for nutrition. They had very little resources. So once that was discovered as, you know, a nutritional, you know, consumption over time, I mean, if that's the only thing that you had, you either evolved to deal with it or you died from starvation or, you know, lack of nutrition, which would cause, you know, make you susceptible to diseases or viruses, things like that. And the people who ended up becoming tolerant of it passed that genetic on. I mean, it is actually lactose intolerance, and being able to consume lactose is actually it can be traced back to genetics.
Yeah, and I think it well, I guess not being lactose intolerant was one was considered like a design. I said that word, was considered a like a defect. Like cats can't drink milk; they actually get sick from it. And yeah, we needed those nutritions as we've kind of spread out from Africa over how many millennia of moving around. And
yeah, it's the same thing as you look at, we rely so heavily on cooked foods, and we rely so heavily on filtered waters. And, you go down, let's say, you decide to go living out in the forest for a month, right? And you find a creek. You're more likely to get sick in this day and age from just drinking out of what you believe is a fresh water creek, just flowing water, than you would have just, 50 years ago.
Yeah, we've, everything is filtered and everything is cleaned. And I know that there was the argument of the reason why we evolved so fast was because we were able to cook meat. So I could see that being an argument, and also the fact that we have opposable thumbs and we can work together, and are the way that our bodies regulate heat, that we can't outrun stuff. Like we can't outrun a cheetah. But distance wise,
run a bear.
Yeah, but we can run longer than a bear. It's just whether you can actually keep up that pace. But that just kind of
what does the cooking of meat have anything to do with evolution?
So if I remember correctly, it
has something to do with the expansion of the neurons in the brain. Like you're doing something differently, and I think it also has something to do like with the difference in nutritional value with raw meat versus cooked meat. I mean, I could be incredibly wrong here because I've never really looked too far into human evolution or what really got us to where we are now, but I do recall reading something about this.
So I think because raw meat, like it's very hard for us to chew, like just try and eat like any piece of meat. But once you cook it, you break down those enzymes and you're actually able to absorb them easier into your body. So it could be that the nutrients that are in meat, and especially in cooked meat, our bodies didn't need to take up as much time trying to process this food.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're using less energy in actual digestion, and you're being able to use that energy elsewhere. Which I see what you're saying. Could have been energy that was put more into learning, more into communicating, more into things that required more brain power because we had the energy to do so.
Yeah. So I'm looking up. What is this called? From sapiens.org, and a doctor is making the claim that just because there's no clear evidence of cooking until about 500,000 years ago doesn't mean hominins, which is us, were not doing it much earlier. Control of fire dates back to at least 1 million years ago, and he imagines it would take those early fire users about an hour and a half to figure out that they could use it to cook. So,
do you think that they were like all sitting around a fire one day and then they started like fighting over something, and then someone knocked someone's meat into the fire and they were like, what the hell? And then got all mad and brought it out and then still went to go eat it anyway. And they're like, oh, hey, this tastes good.
I think it's actually a lot simpler than that. I think they were just curious. Like,
you see another primate.
Yeah, like they will season foods. As weird as that sounds, they will try to make things taste good. So, and we've been doing that for, even if you look at like medieval times, like it's kind of funny seeing there's such a renaissance of like nobles in medieval times. It was considered good to eat like highly refined breads. Like the whiter the flour, the more pure, the better it was for you. And then the peasants would eat like, things that we would actually, like today would sound really good. Like, whole oat, red flour, a piece of salmon, maybe a glass of beer or water or wine, and like cooked peas. That sounds fantastic.
But you can keep the peas, but unless they're...
No, shut up.
I hate cooked peas.
No.
Let's pass them my way.
Yeah. I'll eat your peas and you can go starve. But I think even from like Roman times, like there's a cookbook that I've been wanting to get, but it's all recipes from like ancient Rome, and they would always try to make things taste good. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a lightning struck a tree and then someone found, hey, what if I put this meat on? What will it taste better? And then they cook it, and they probably after trial and error, they find like, hey, this is so much easier to eat. We don't have to sit here and try and chew on this hard stuff.
I'm just imagining in my head, they're all just kind of like wandering around, and then all of a sudden a lightning bolt hits a tree and a rotisserie chicken falls out.
That'd be awesome.
Hold on, wait a second. What is that? It smells amazing. Beating on their chest and scratching their head, going, ooh, and everybody comes running over.
So I'm looking, and it says evidence that hominins were making tools and eating meat as far back as 3.3 million years ago, and they increased their meat consumption around 2.6 million years ago. Yet evidence for cooking doesn't turn up till about 500,000 years ago. So
wow.
Sounds to me like they were doing it accidentally at first, and then eventually they just kind of caught on to like, this is the way to go.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. A little tussle around the fire, and then their meat fell on it, and they got all
somebody
angry.
Falls in.
Then he's like, "Damn, that tastes good. Let's do that again."
Like a person falls in?
No, a chunk of their raw meat that they had there.
Oh,
hey Chief, we lost another one.
And cannibalism was born.
No, don't worry about it. We're eating good tonight.
Yeah, well, whole raw meat wasn't possible to chew into pieces and emerged as tattered bolus. Sliced meat requires 31.8% less muscle force to chew, and it was broken down into small pieces that would be easier to digest. Wow.
Interesting.
So, over the course of a year, switching from a diet of pure raw plants to one that has composed of 2/3 raw plants and 1/3 of raw sliced meat will require 17% fewer chews and 20% less force. I don't know. It's definitely, but I don't know. Because dinosaurs, so dinosaurs, extinct? What, it was like 26 million years ago?
No, I think it was it 65? Wow, you caught me off guard with this question. I don't know how I don't know this. Jeez.
Oh yeah, you're right. About 65 million years ago.
I was going to say 65, 66.
Correct.
So, and then after the whole Yucatan thing, Mexico fucked it all up for us. So after that, I know that there were arguments that, we ended up evolving from like a tiny like little rat. So for like
possum, sir.
Yeah. What was it? So like 65, like that is a long time for an evolutionary jump, and then, well, I wouldn't even be a jump, but an evolutionary period. I don't know. Maybe God is real.
It's crazy to think, just going back to what you just said, dinosaurs being around up until 65, 66 million years ago, like that, and then just that time frame, 66 million years, all the way up until now, minus everything that happened in between that time. It's like a lot of people think that, when people want to argue evolution, one thing doesn't just change into another. No, it adapts to its environment changing, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you go lay down in your bed and tomorrow you wake up and you're, ready for a fully aquatic lifestyle.
Ah, shit.
Yeah.
I was hoping that's how it worked out.
When
Man.
Kim's gonna wake up tomorrow and be a mermaid.
Oh, God, I wish. That would be awesome. I used to dream of
Where-
that when I was a kid. I'm not even
Where's the
joking.
closest body of water? Mommy's got to go.
Yeah.
Well, and you think like dinosaurs too. Like it was saying that they lived on Earth for 165 million years yet. Like that's
Yeah.
insane. Like that is a huge, long time that dinosaurs roamed this Earth.
It's even
Yeah.
more crazy to break it down to a point where they believed like Tyrannosaurus Rex, as an example. Here we go again with the T-Rex. But they thought it's estimated that it lived possibly up to 30 years old before it became a full adult and died of old age. So break that down, for just the time period that Tyrannosaurus Rex existed on Earth, but they only lived for about 30 years each. What they were on our planet as a species and successful for millions of years.
Yeah, like if that crater or that asteroid didn't come and mess everything up, hey, like we wouldn't be where we are now. Like
Right?
it's
We
crazy.
probably would be, but we definitely wouldn't be in human bodies.
No, not yeah. Like you can for people that don't understand like how big this thing was, you can see the ripples of the Chicxulub meteor that hit the Earth. You can see those ripples. You can see the crater of it today.
Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to say is you can see the ripples in the Earth's crust of just how forceful the impact actually was.
Yeah, like we've had volcanoes that have caused like a nuclear winter that have almost brought human civilization to extinction. Just from volcanoes have almost wiped out people.
So do
And
you
then
not
add a huge
think?
space rock on top of it.
Yeah.
So do you not think that if the meteor had hit the Earth and dinosaurs went extinct, that humanity wouldn't be around?
Who are you asking?
Anyone.
Oh.
God, I'm asking God. No, anyone.
My
God.
my uneducated opinion, I would say we probably wouldn't. I don't think humans would end up becoming a thing.
My personal opinion on that is to be completely honest with you, I don't really have an answer for that because we don't know what circumstances would have taken place if they had not gone extinct. We don't know, if something else would have happened that corresponded with them going extinct at some point, or we don't know if speculative evolution would have occurred where they became the next us in advancing. I'm not saying dinosaurs are going to walk around typing on computers, but you never know. With them going extinct 66 million years until today's time frame, that's a long time for things to change. So you don't really know. I think
I just always pictured during Jurassic time that they had oh my God, what do you call those people? Like cavemen and stuff like that. I always just kind of, I don't know, probably warped from Hollywood movies and stuff like that, but I always just assumed that there was
a
some
human
sort
walking around
of
somewhere.
before we are what we are now. Yeah.
Well, I guess. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I thought like we did look into this. That like proto-human was. God, I can't remember how far. Like it actually it went back pretty far. Our at least our ancestry. I can't remember where I So I guess earliest they see is about 10 million years ago. Is some type of evolution of primates.
Oh, wow. So that's like 45 years after dinosaurs went extinct yet. 45
Yeah,
million.
yeah,
Wow.
I know what you meant. Or 55.
Well, no one said I could math, okay? You didn't bury me for this, brain.
It's
We've
still
discussed
a
this already.
huge gap. It's still a huge gap, regardless. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why going back to that question, and do I think that we as humans would exist if the dinosaurs never went extinct? Again, you don't know. You really don't know. I would assume that we would not, but would an advanced species eventually take rise? I think so. I think that it would get to a point where something became intelligent enough to, maybe not be, like I said, at the same exact level of where we're at now. But I do think that, a species or species would advance just enough that they would, here we go with the niche thing, is that they would fulfill a niche that's similar to what we do. Although that in itself is an argument. What niche we actually fulfill? We actually destroy all niches around us and become the niche.
Well, and like I remember seeing like with us that our abilities to throw things was monumental. Our ability to actually, form communities, because we're not the biggest, we're definitely not the strongest, but we can manipulate things, and that's what gives us an advantage over any other animal. Is that we can manipulate, we can impose our will onto the earth itself. And no creature has ever been able to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And yeah, just like I said, the ability that we can articulate and create weapons and.
See, what I would what's kind of bringing into my head right now. So if dinosaurs were around for 165 million years, then there was a 55, there you go, million year gap before humanity started kind of evolving. I wonder when humans are no longer on this earth, what's going to evolve after that? Or if
Well,
the only way that
monkeys.
humans wouldn't be on the earth anymore is if the earth blew up, then nothing would.
If we all left, I wouldn't be surprised if in like 2 or 3 million years, monkeys, like are whether it's I don't know, like chimpanzees or something like that. Like apparently we share it's an insanely high amount of DNA similarities to
like 91% or something like that.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
insanely high. Actually, and we have a lot in common with dolphins too, surprisingly. Our DNA, we share a lot of DNA, like a substantial amount of DNA with dolphins.
Now that's interesting to me.
Right?
I would have never seen that, other than thought process.
Yeah, they're
Dolphins are very destructive, very destructive to the organisms around them.
dolphin. That I can't remember what the number is. Is amazingly similar to humans. They're closer to us than cows, horses, or pigs, despite the fact that they live in the water. The extent of the genetic similarity comes as a real surprise to us, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember what So genes are organized in segments, yada, yada. Dolphins have 44 chromosomes and humans have 46. As team applied human paint, fluorescently labeled pieces of human chromosomes to dolphin chromosomes on microscope slides. Scientists broke open dolphin cells.
95%.
With the chimpanzee?
Dolphin.
Really? What?
Yeah, a report published in the National Academy of Science in 2002 suggests that under the most rigorous aliens, the match would only be 70 or 95% similarity overall.
95%. Wow. That's. And what are we? What's our DNA with monkeys? Is it? I would assume it's in the high 90s as well. see. Yeah, well, like I don't know, this almost seems like like the nail in the coffin that
90.
so we're actually
Humans
more
share-
like dolphins.
Okay, hold on. No. Okay. I jumped the gun there. It said share over 90%. Humans and chimps still share 96%. Wow. The DNA sequence that can be directly compared with both two genomes is almost 99% identical. When DNA insertions and deletions are taken into account, human and chimps are still share 96% of their sequence at a protein level of 29% of gene codes for the same amino sequence as chimps or in chimps and humans.
So 96 chimp,
Wow.
95 dolphin.
Right?
I'm wondering if that's included like certain genes that turn on and off, like by chemical compounds during certain stages of our lives as well.
Oh yeah. Well, apparently I don't know. I think they've said like chimpanzees have officially entered the Stone Age like 10 or 20 years ago. They'll use like sticks and rocks to hunt.
Yeah, I saw something about that. Orangutans do that too.
Yeah, that's so. So once we leave Earth and we fucked it up for everyone else, they have to clean up our mess.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And when the first human arrives back, cage them.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Hurry, tell Caesar. Crazy.
Wow. All right. Is there anything else, or should we get the hell out of here?
I'm good. I think we had a great a couple of discussions tonight. It was really, really awesome to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
To the next one.
It was really good. We went for an hour and 53 minutes.
Oh, almost 2 hours. Jesus.
Yeah.
And it didn't even feel like it.
No, it did not.
No, that was very cool. That was a lot of information.
I was almost ready for somebody like, okay, so next topic, or we're calling it.
No, this is how they go. We just get immersed into them. It's great. No, we definitely love to have you come by again sometime and discuss some more interesting things. That was awesome.
Definitely. Yeah. I'd be more than happy.
All right.
I just became stumped with the whole 95 dolphin. That's
You're welcome.
My brain was like ready to shut down at that point. I'm just like, what?
I told you, man. I know a lot of like useless information. These are like the rabbit holes that I go down.
It's like I was on such a straightforward path, and then it's like, okay, here's information, entertaining information, discussion of this brick wall.
And the brick wall was the dolphin.
Yeah. I was the Carnotaurus that explosively just started running forward as I was at a decent pace, and then all of a sudden just tree line. Like I said, with the tail, can't zigzag, can't maneuver. I'm just like standing here in the tree line, going, now what?
All right. Well, with that, Walter, thank you very much. That was I would love to do that. Do this again. But
yes. I'd be more than happy.
Everyone else, thank you for listening. You can check us out on what are we on? YouTube, Rumble, Anchor, Spotify. Check our shitty Facebook page.
Instagram.
Instagram.
Forget that.
Yeah. PayPal if you want. Other than that, let's get the hell out of here.
Everybody have a great day, great night. Be safe.
Yes, thank you.
Good night, everyone.